Hey, Order back. How are you,
Hey,
man?
hey,
Good to
good, good,
see
good.
you.
Good to see you, my friend. How are you doing, David?
Hey, I'm fantastic.
Yeah,
I wish we could be playing concerts right now, but in
yeah,
the meantime, it's just really great to share our love for music and
absolutely.
our gift of expression in another way. Hopefully, we can inspire people to be practicing
Oh,
and
yes.
putting up those recitals and those new pieces and writing new pieces, and we can inspire creativity with our conversations.
Yes, absolutely. And let me say a few words before we start our conversation that this is a really good friend of mine, former colleague, in fact, and principal horn of the legendary Chicago Symphony Orchestra and the former principal horn of the legendary as well Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, and very dear friend of mine, David Cooper. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thank you, Orbeck.
And
It's
David,
good to see you.
thank you. Really, I appreciate you, for the such enthusiasm to be part of the conversation. And I would like to really express that, thank you
Well,
again.
I think this is my first Instagram live I've done that's not been my own. This is
Yes.
like my first, and this is the first time I've been on the other side of it. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's like it's great to share with another audience and
absolutely. And
and a non-brass player to speak.
exactly, yeah, and we're gonna get to that later on because I have my perspective and I'm sure you have your perspectives.
Okay.
So, but yeah, David, let me ask you why horn? Like, why did you pick the horn all of a sudden? There are so many instruments. Like,
Man,
how old were you, and what made you to pick the horn?
okay, so we used to have this commute back and forth to my grandma's house. My
Okay,
grandma would watch me, and it was like pretty much before I was in school.
okay,
So I must have been in like, maybe kindergarten, maybe before. So
hmm
I don't know if I'd even started piano at that point. But I
okay,
remember I was going to my grandma's house, or I was going across town
yeah.
to from the west side of town to the east side of town in Lansing, Michigan, where I grew up.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And there was
I
this
actually, I actually been to Lansing. Yes.
You have?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, no kidding, man. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's a really interesting town because it's so diverse. I mean, if you look at Motown,
hmm
Motown is just a that's Detroit. We call it Detroit Motown.
Yeah.
And if you look at Detroit, Detroit's just a bigger version of Lansing. But
Okay.
you've got like academics, you've got business people, you have all these people who work in the auto industry or worked in the auto
hmm
industry, and then in Lansing, you also have the farm community.
hmm
So the way it was divided is like the west side of town is the farm community. The
Yeah.
center part of town is like kind of the people who worked for the auto workers,
Industry.
so
Yeah.
General Motors,
Yeah.
Oldsmobile, like all that
hmm
sort of stuff. And then the east side of town was like the kind of the academics for Michigan State University.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
my mom worked at Michigan State University,
Okay.
and then my dad was, kind of like in the farm community because my dad had like a business that he ran himself. It was more like landscape
hmm
contracting,
hmm
and that sort of stuff.
hmm
But yeah, so
And
for
how old were you? Like, do you remember yourself being like wanting to play the horn?
I mean, I must have been young. I must have been like 4 or 5. I mean, but my mom ran
Wow. Okay.
this fantastic classical music radio station,
Sure.
and she just have it going all the time. It was just like
hmm
always going in the car.
Okay.
And I remember like when she pointed it out to me, I remember I stopped and I listened.
hmm
Because my mom grew up with her mom was a horn player, her brother was a horn player. My mom is
Ah, okay.
particularly small. My mom is like 4'10". I don't know what that is in centimeters or in meters.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It will
we could
take
do
me
it
a
in
while.
person, but she's short. She comes up to about here on me.
Okay. Okay.
And they said she was just too small to carry the horn and too
Okay.
small to play the horn.
Uh-huh.
And now if it was today, I don't think it would be that case. But in those days, in the 50s, they said,
Yeah.
hey, it's 60s. It's just she was too small.
Okay.
So she wasn't allowed to play, and as a
hmm
result, she really wanted to be part of that thing that she saw her mom doing and her brother doing,
Okay.
and she was tuned into the sound of it, and so she pointed it out on the classical music radio station. And I remember it must have been like a Mozart Symphony or Haydn Symphony. It was like a two
Mm.
horn kind of like
Yeah.
classical work.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I heard the horn and I was just like, that's the greatest sound in the orchestra.
Hmm.
And I just was captivated by it. I was like, I'm going to play that instrument.
Okay.
And before second grade, I remember, maybe it was during second grade,
Hmm.
I went to like some farmer's market and they had like Christmas instruments, you know, just
Uh-huh.
like, you know, things you put on your Christmas tree or
Yeah.
decorate your house with. And there was a horn.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was like a simple, yeah, a simple like, you know, tube of metal with a bell and a mouthpiece. And it was
Yeah.
like attached, right? And it was like
Right.
probably, you know, $10 or something. And
Hmm.
we put, you know, I tried to make sounds on it. And like, I remember I made some sounds on it and like that, my mom bought that horn for me. And I
Oh,
must have been
wow. Awesome.
7 years old, 8 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I
I,
know I wanted to be a horn player before I was
so
8.
I guess that's how it started then.
Yeah, just making sounds on this little, and I
Yeah.
found
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I could, you know, and my brother was a trumpet player, so
Hmm.
and he's
Okay.
4 years older than me, so I
Uh-huh.
think he was probably starting the trumpet about that time,
Hmm.
and so I knew how to make a sound on a trumpet,
Okay.
and so I saw him practicing and learning the trumpet, and then I got this little, you know, brass French horn, and I was
Hmm.
playing that, and it was just,
Hmm.
you know, I just loved it, and then of course I found singing kind of in the middle of my second grade year, in that summer in between second grade and third grade, I found
Hmm.
the Beatles. And
Okay.
I started like listening to the Beatles and I couldn't get enough of them. Like just
Oh,
like
yeah.
melodies. I couldn't get
Hmm.
enough of like the lyrics and just like the instruments they used.
Yeah.
And I started singing along with all these Beatles tunes, and my mom realized I had a really good ear. Like, you know,
Hmm.
I could sing the melody with the Beatles.
So,
And
which
so
means you have a perfect pitch then, right?
you know, I think I have relative pitch. Like, you
Okay.
know, when people ask me to sing things back for the horn, I won't generally sing it in the right key, but I'll sing, you know, the relative. I might
Oh,
transpose it in my head.
I see. I
So
see. Hmm.
yeah, whatever it fits my voice, you know.
Sure.
So
Sure. Yeah. Well, the register you in. Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I forgot your voice is so low, by the way. I forgot that
Actually, yes. Actually, yeah. My voice is low.
we should have done a barbershop quartet when we were,
Oh,
you know,
yeah. That
back
would be
in the
wonderful.
DFW area. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that would be definitely fun.
You know, Kyle Sherman, the principal trumpeter
Yeah,
of the Folk
sure,
City, he's got a
sure.
beautiful voice.
Yeah, actually, he has. Yeah, he has. Yeah,
They
yeah.
used to pay him to sing in the choir. They'd like, you know, like buff up their choir in Yale, and he would
Yeah.
like, sing in the choir in Yale. And
Hmm.
yeah, he was like one of
Oh,
the high
wow.
tenors.
I didn't know that. Well, whenever we get back, I'll make sure that I'll tell him that. So,
Yeah, ask him to sing something
yeah,
for you. You know, like the three or four of us are, you know, I
right.
don't know who else we could get in the choir in our
Yeah.
barbershop. You know,
Hmm.
Steve Peterson, one of my good friends, the
Yeah.
trombone player.
Hmm.
He would be a fun guy to have in a barbershop
Hmm.
quartet. Maybe
Hmm.
Cody McClarty.
Cody. Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be definitely fun.
Actually, I'm in a brass quintet with those guys, like
Are
Steve
you?
Peterson, yeah,
Oh.
Kyle, Cody, and then
Uh-huh.
Clay Garrett, who is a tuba player who won Falcone. He lives in Waco,
Uh-huh.
and his wife Ann teaches bassoon at Baylor.
Oh, Baylor. Okay. I
Yeah.
see. I see.
So sorry,
Okay.
I got off on a tangent,
No, no,
but
no, no, no. Like, no, it's all great. I really wanted to point it out, like from my what I remember, you know, like when I started like subbing with the Fort Worth Symphony, I think you were part of the you know, horn section there, and I remember you constantly like, you know, like being so like careful and always be like before the rehearsal and practice, and I thought like, hey, that guy, he will go further,
oh
you know,
man,
like further on. And sure enough, you know, next thing I hear, and I remember, I think, was it the Dallas you got first, like
yeah,
principal
yeah.
horn?
Well, I
No.
won third horn in Dallas,
Oh, the third
and
horn. Okay.
and that was a huge leap for me.
Okay.
You know, to go from Fort Worth, and you know, like the Fort Worth Symphony is an amazing orchestra, like
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable orchestra. And I have to say, I think Bass Hall is
Yeah,
one of the best concert halls in America.
I think so too. Yeah, the bass hall is fantastic
I
hall
mean,
in there.
it's such a good hall.
Mm-hmm.
Like the orchestra can just play. Like no one has to force anything.
Exactly, yeah. It's really easy to play. Everything responds quickly. Yes, you're right.
And then
Absolutely.
you go out in the hall and everything blends together perfectly. It makes like
Yes.
what we might hear so clearly on stage across the stage, when
Hmm.
you go out in the hall, it's just like, oh man, it just blends. Yeah. I think it's like the Carnegie Hall of Texas, man.
Probably, yeah, yeah, I would say so. Probably, yeah.
I can't think, I can't I've played all over the world and I can't think of
Sure.
many concert halls better than Bass Hall.
Yeah, the basketball is a fantastic hall. I think we are so lucky to play in that hall,
Yeah.
like, every other, I don't know, week, I guess.
Yeah. And then
But
also I
yeah,
mean,
go ahead.
well,
Go.
back up. I mean, we gotta say some shout outs to the Fort Worth Symphony
Yeah,
because Miguel Harth Bedoya. I mean,
he's
first of all,
actually, it's actually today's his birthday, by the way.
what?
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
Yes, happy birthday,
Miguel!
Miguel. Yeah.
Do you know? Is he 50 yet? I don't even think he's
He's
50.
actually 51 today, I believe.
51 today.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah.
I mean, he's been in Fort Worth for golly 20 years.
20 years, yeah. That's actually the season he's closing. And unfortunately, under these circumstances, like uncertain
Oh man.
circumstances,
Well,
that,
I think Miguel Harth Bedoya is he's one of the most talented music directors and conductors, musicians.
yeah,
I mean, he's always going, and
yeah, he's
he's
always going. Hmm.
so passionate about like music from Latin America.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
look,
yeah. He's so advocate for that. Yeah.
I heard a music. There's this series I really love. It's called what is it? It's called Explaining Music, or it's with Bill McLaughlin. It's
Hmm.
this music series on PBS, and I used to get it. I would drive, like home around 8 p.m. and it would
Yeah,
always be from 8 to 9 on the classical music station
sure.
in North Texas.
Uh-huh.
And
101.1.
yeah, yeah, exact 90.1, right?
Oh, 90.1. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
90.1. And
Yes.
I forget the name of the series, but anyways, yeah, Bill McLaughlin did like a whole week
Hmm.
on music from like Central America and Latin
Hmm.
America. And apparently, so Latin America and Central America was colonized in
Hmm.
1500s and 1600s by Spanish.
Sure. Yeah.
And so a lot of the music that came over was Renaissance and Baroque music.
Hmm.
And then it was like really isolated from the rest of the world.
Hmm.
So, there was like, this tradition that was set up
Hmm.
from Europe. And then there was like literally almost no contact with the outside world for 100, 200 years.
Yeah.
So they took these songs, like all these dance movements, like all the Latin, the Renaissance music from Spain from the 1600s, and they just developed that style over 200 years.
Yeah.
And then with like the influx of like boats and it became easier to get to Latin America.
Hmm.
Then they started getting more influence, but
Hmm.
there was like about a 200-year period of composition in the Renaissance and the Baroque style.
Hmm. Hmm.
So like, and then all those instruments, and so there's like a very rich tradition of Latin
Hmm.
American music, and Miguel has kind of taken
Miguel.
it upon himself to show this music and bring it to North America, to bring it to
Yeah.
Europe, to bring it to the
Hmm.
concert stage where it really belongs,
Yeah.
next to some of the great composers like
Sure.
Beethoven, Bach, Brahms.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
just because we don't know it doesn't mean it's not great music. I mean, it's
Sure. Absolutely.
fantastic
I
music.
agree.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. David, let's talk about a little bit more what's influence, because I remember like, I started to substitute with the Dallas Symphony, and then I remember you, and then of course there was Jaap van Zweden. So
Yeah.
fantastic conductor, fantastic musician,
Yeah.
and not only my opinion, but in general, like, he used to be concertmaster of the Concertgebouw, and can you tell like what influence he made on you? Like,
So Yop is like one of these guys. Imagine a coach, right? Like they're
hmm.
like, for lack of a better analogy, Bill Belichick and
Hmm.
Tom Brady,
Okay.
right? You got to have a really great quarterback, but you also have to have a really great coach. And I
Hmm.
think the quarterback has to be willing to trust the coach, and I think the quarterback also has to respect the
Hmm.
coach.
Yeah.
Say, hey, listen, like I understand, what you want, and I understand how you want it to go, and I
Hmm.
respect your vision. And
Yeah.
I think the coach also has to respect the talent and understand how to use the talent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to compare myself to Tom Brady in any sense, or you know, compare Yop to, you know, Bill Belichick, but I think it's the same sort of kind of relationship.
Yeah.
You know, having like this really great leader, understanding the players in your orchestra, and then figuring out how to get the best out of them.
Oh yeah.
And when I work with Yop, he's able to get something more from me than I thought I had, if that
Hmm.
makes any sense.
Oh, totally, totally. You know, he also made like such a huge impact on me in a way that, because first of all, he's a violinist, and then you would realize like, oh my God, there is something that, you know, I didn't know I have, you know.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, like he saw something in me that I didn't know I had.
Hmm. So
It's like
basically, he
he's,
probably like pulled out of you, you know.
yeah, absolutely, just like you said.
Hmm.
And you know, and he had this way of like knowing what to say to get it out of me.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
like it wasn't always comfortable. Like, you know,
Oh,
and that's the thing is like growth, you know, change. These are
hmm,
things that we're going through right now. Like,
yeah.
you know, we're having to figure out we're having to reinvent ourselves.
Hmm.
You know, I'm the type of person that loves to be doing something. I
Sure.
love to have a goal. I love
Hmm.
to have a project,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah. You are
all
so famous for that.
you know, and it's just right now we don't have these traditional goals, these traditional deadlines, these traditional projects,
Hmm.
and so I think it takes a bit of creativity to say like, hey, like, okay, what am I good at,
Hmm.
and how can I give back with
Yeah.
my skill set?
Sure.
You know, and
Absolutely.
like I realized, okay, I love to share, and I
Hmm.
love to encourage others,
Hmm.
and I love you know, I really like people. I
Yeah.
just do. You know, when I have a conversation with somebody, I usually am really interested in finding out what they think, how they feel, what made them, what helped them get there,
Hmm.
and their journey. And
Hmm.
so for me, like, you know, I found out, okay, you know, this love of people, because I can't be face to face with you, I can
Hmm.
still like have a conversation with you and still get to know you, and I
Absolutely.
can also learn from you,
Hmm.
and figure out ways to, you know, ask questions and be curious.
Yeah.
So whenever I talk to somebody, I always want to like pinpoint like that thing that might maybe I could learn from, but maybe somebody else could learn from.
Hmm.
And I'm finding that like today,
Right.
you know, I can't share my music. Well, I can.
Yeah, you can, of course.
It's
It's
just
just,
I have to change how I do it. Right?
yeah.
Like I can't, I have to, okay, I'll do a recording project with myself and I'll put the parts together, or I'll do a solo recital with solo horn music. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and
Hmm.
it's fun to figure out these challenges and how to share. But
Yeah.
also like learning. I'm always curious. I'm always learning, and if I can bring learning and curiosity and
Hmm.
inspiration to maybe a younger student who might be struggling right now, that's really
Sure.
my goal with these conversations.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. I really hope that, you know, and I'm sure it uh, make will make a huge impact and influence on, you know, on the kids and students. I'm sure of it. And thank you really for
oh
doing
man,
this.
it's my pleasure, man. So back to your question about Yop.
Yeah.
So you asked
I
me how did he bring these things out of me? You know,
Yeah.
and we got talking about change and about growth and about, you know, all these things that are not so comfortable, but you know, as a person, we're always changing. Our
Yeah.
environment is always changing,
Hmm.
and you know, we're either growing or, you know, like, or we're not. But I
Yeah.
want to grow and adapt to these situations,
Absolutely.
and be happy with these situations.
Yeah.
So when Yop asked more from me than I was comfortable, yeah,
Hmm.
it's painful, right? Like you're like,
Yeah.
I can't do this on the horn today, but I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, tomorrow I'm gonna figure out a way to come back, and I'm gonna figure out a way to do that.
Yeah.
And Yop would like, you know, kind of highlight, hey, like you can do more. I expect more, and now we're gonna see if this is possible. And he'd give
Hmm.
me an opportunity to experiment and to try these things in rehearsal, and then
Yes, I remember. Hmm.
by the concert, like I would just be like, all right, I'm gonna show you what I can do. And it was
Yeah.
like I just wanted to show him, like, you know, all right, let me show you what I can do.
Hmm.
Like, you know, he'd
Hmm.
push me, and then I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna show it. And it was
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah. I remember. I'm not sure if you remember, but you know, like I remember I used to stay in between the dress rehearsal and the concert in the Meyerson Hall and just, get lunch somewhere and then come back and do practicing
Yeah.
because it was really inspiring to me. But, and also because of the traffic jam,
Yeah.
all that. But I'm not sure if you remember, but I remember you staying as well and practicing in between. And I was thinking, like, man, I mean, you guys need to save the lips and all that because, the ambush and all that.
Yeah.
And I remember you staying, yeah, practicing and practicing, and I really was, happy for you at the same time that I was sure that it will take you somewhere even more.
Honestly, man, like my biggest goal in life is to have a place to play music
Hmm.
and have a place to practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
It's like if I have a place where I want to play music with people that love music, and I want to play music in a place where people want to come see us.
yeah. Hmm.
So like it's I love working with people that are as passionate about music as I am, and you can find that at any level. Like I found people in community orchestras or in amateur
Yes,
settings
sure.
that just love playing music,
Hmm.
right? And then with that love, wanting to share it,
Yeah,
right? So yeah, and then honestly, so I need a place to practice,
yeah.
and I need a place to play with others, and then I need people to come and see me, because I've tried I've had the place to practice and I've had people to play with, but then if no one comes, it's like oh man,
Oh, yeah,
such a
yeah,
bummer, and I've tried.
yeah. We need audience for sure.
Yeah, I've tried setting up recitals myself, and
Hmm.
just to get people to come to a horn recital, it's like so hard, man. So like for our marketing team, our sales team, like
Yeah,
those are tough jobs getting people to and I think it's easier to sell the Chicago Symphony concerts than the solo French horn
yeah,
recital.
yeah. We'll get to Chicago Symphony
Yeah.
later on, but David, can you please tell me how did Berlin like? So you were in Dallas, right? From my
Yeah.
memories, for like 5 or 6 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I
If not
started
more?
in 2011, and then by
Okay.
2016, I won principal horn of the Berlin Philharmonic.
Okay. Can you tell about the audition in Berlin Philharmonic? Because,
Yeah,
big.
absolutely. So that was my second audition with the Berlin Philharmonic, and so
Oh, really? I
my
didn't know
first
that.
audition was in 2013,
Okay.
and I had just gone on this this tour de force of auditions, right? Like, and
Hmm.
so for me, like as you can see, I like doing things,
Sure.
and I like practicing, and I like playing. And for me, I had there were a lot of openings
Hmm.
that year. There was a
Yeah.
principal horn in London Symphony. There was principal
Okay.
horn in the National Symphony. There was
Hmm.
principal horn in, I want to say Cleveland,
Okay.
maybe, but there was
Hmm.
definitely principal horn in Chicago Symphony that was open. There was
Hmm.
principal horn in the Berlin Philharmonic that was open. There was associate principal horn that was open in the New York Philharmonic.
Okay.
So I was
Wow. It's like,
getting this point where it was like, okay, I've got some experience, right, playing
hmm,
third horn in the Dallas Symphony.
hmm,
I think that year maybe no, it was the year before. Okay, so I had played with the Dallas Symphony for 2 years.
hmm.
I played a little bit of principal horn on the Rosenkavalier Suite on the tour in Europe, and that was my trial for the Dallas Symphony. And then I got to
I
play
no, go ahead.
principal.
Go ahead.
I get to play principal horn with the London Symphony on Czech 5 on an Italian tour, and it was
Oh,
like,
wow.
holy smokes! Like it was like a dream come true. Like
Okay.
it was like the orchestra that recorded Star Wars. You got to
Uh-huh.
hear this orchestra that recorded Star Wars. Like
Yeah.
next to you, you're in the middle of it, and
Hmm.
it sounded just like the recordings of them,
That's
like that I
fantastic.
had heard of all those great movie soundtracks.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, man. And then so I'd done this audition tour with all these great auditions, and
Hmm.
I decided not to audition in New York
Okay.
because at that point playing associate principal horn was not necessarily, it was in a big orchestra, but it wasn't necessarily where I saw my career going.
Okay.
And associate principal horn shares the principal horn duties in the
Mm.
States. So we have
Yes.
associate principal horn that usually plays the overtures or the uh, what else? They play overtures, they play concertos, and then they'll play sometimes the weeks when the principal horn might be, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
on
Off.
rotation.
Off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Hmm.
I saw myself maybe playing more principal horn because I wanted to have opportunities to play pieces like Mahler 5.
Oh yeah.
To have opportunities to play principal horn on like Bruckner 4 or
Hmm.
some of the stuff that you wouldn't necessarily get to play, like the bigger works. And
Sure.
that's not to say that I wouldn't, but I thought I'd have more opportunities.
Hmm.
So I decided I wanted to go for principal horn, and then I went
Okay.
over. I went to New York because I still had the plane ticket to New York,
Oh, I see.
and then I
Hmm.
flew to Berlin from New York. And so on my
Hmm.
way to the airport, the plane got canceled. Like they just canceled. They canceled the,
Wow.
and
Okay.
I was like, if I don't get on this flight, there's no way I'm gonna make it to the Berlin Philharmonic audition.
Yeah.
And so like I did, like there was a line around the terminal like to like get on this plane. And I remember like I went to everyone in a uniform, just said, you gotta get me on this flight to the Berlin Philharmonic audition. Like it's my dream.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
And I
Wow.
barely I don't know how I made it. Like they had like, 3 tickets left and I got one of 3 tickets.
Oh
And
wow.
then, like one of the like stewardesses who I'd seen and I begged, I was like, could you please help me get on my flight? I got to go audition for the Berlin Philharmonic. It's my dream. I just like, it is, right?
Sure.
And
Oh yeah.
you have to tell people like where you're at when you're traveling, like, because like, if they can help you make your life goal, like,
Hmm.
of being in the Berlin Philharmonic by, somehow getting you on this flight,
Yeah.
like, and so they got me on the flight.
Hmm.
And then I realized, like, for that audition, I didn't have my music memorized. I didn't have a cadenza of my own written.
Hmm.
And, like, I barely made it there. And I was playing an American horn. And I didn't know German. So
Hmm.
the next time I came back in 2016, I was talking to a student. I said, hey, like, what things did I learn from me
Hmm.
by taking that audition? Well, I learned what not to do.
Yeah.
And so I said, if I was going to go for principal horn of the Berlin Philharmonic, and it just opened up again, right? Like they
Hmm.
just posted the audition. I said, okay, I'm going to get a German horn.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn German.
Hmm.
I'm going to, like memorize my music like really well. And then
Yeah.
I'm going to write my own cadenza.
Hmm.
So I did these things, and then I practiced, performing the recital,
Hmm.
and I practiced my music really, really just in like a methodical method. And I think that's
Hmm.
when I really tooled down became an efficient practicer and really focused on specific goals when I was practicing, such
Sure.
as like playing in time, playing in tune. And these things weren't things that I was thinking about those, but
Hmm.
it was like, before it was like, oh, that's close enough. And
Yeah.
close enough only works in horseshoes and hand grenades, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
and
you
how
know,
many how many finalists were in the final like of the audition in Berlin?
so there were, I want to say there were 30 people, maybe 20 to 20, 30 people that showed up for the audition. And I was the only
Hmm.
person in the semifinal round. And I was
Oh
the only
wow.
person in the final round. So I was the
Oh
only
wow.
person that they considered. And so I
Hmm.
played 2 more rounds.
Hmm.
And I didn't think I was like, there's no way they're going to hire an American for principal horn. That's
Hmm.
like, but when I left the stage after playing my excerpts, they gave me a
Hmm.
standing ovation,
Oh
which was
wow.
like, I was like, oh, that's really nice of them. They're being very
Sure.
supportive. And what I realized is that they actually, really liked my playing.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Hmm.
I couldn't believe it. And then they offered me the position. And of course,
Wow.
you have to take that job. Like there's,
Sure. I mean,
I,
it's
yeah.
yeah,
And
it's something
I
that.
was like, okay, like I'm going to do whatever in my power to be, to do this and to embrace the style, to embrace
Hmm.
the country, to embrace the orchestra. So I started listening
Yeah.
to lots of recordings of the Berlin Philharmonic. I
Hmm.
really, I felt like I tried to adapt my playing a bit to be a bit more of the German style,
Yeah, because
which is
Germanic is
like,
yeah, it's
I
different.
feel there's just a sound,
Yeah,
and
it's sound. Yeah.
it's not really a style. It's just more of a sound.
Hmm.
The style might be like where they play on the beat or how they phrase things,
Hmm.
because it's like language, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Whenever the way I speak, my intonation, my inflection, my timing, that's how I'm
Hmm.
going to play music.
Hmm.
So the exact same way that like, another country develops timing, they develop intonation when they speak,
Yeah.
just like when I speak German, my voice goes very high.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. 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 Harlem. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. I always. I mean, I do watch the Berlin Digital Hall, and
they're
I was.
fantastic. They're
I
just
was. Yeah.
cutting
Go. Go
edge.
ahead. Yeah, I
Oh,
was so
sorry.
happy to see. No, I was so happy to see you when the Berlin went to Hong Kong Asian tour, and I was like, "Hey, there is David." Yeah, I was, it was something, one of those moments. Like I was so happy for you, and then
Oh,
proud that you there, and I can call you dear friend of mine. So I was really happy for you.
oh, thanks, man. That means a lot
Yeah,
to me.
yeah. So
No,
David, can you tell me about like how the Chicago Symphony? Because it's like, from Berlin and then to Chicago, it's like th those one of the, if not the greatest orchestras in the world.
oh man, I have to say a couple quick shout outs real quick. So John
Sure.
Ye is watching, and
Okay.
John Ye is like my dear friend from the Chicago
Okay.
Symphony, and
Hi, John. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
love John. Like John's
Hmm.
like just one of the nicest human beings I've ever met, and also just
Hmm.
like inspirational musician, great storyteller, dear friend of mine. And so yeah,
Oh,
John's watching right now, so I just want to say
okay.
hi.
Thank you.
And
Yeah. Hi.
yeah, and he says the Berlin Phil Digital Concert Hall is amazing. And
Yeah.
backing up to that, there's really nothing like it. And there's like
Yeah.
it's this resource of um, concerts,
Hmm.
with all these different conductors. And
Yeah.
the nice thing about the Berlin Philharmonic is that you have opportunities to hear people like me play. Like,
Uh-huh.
you have the first horn from the Chicago Symphony who played with the Berlin Philharmonic. You
Hmm.
have Martin Owen, who's principal in, I believe, one of the BBC orchestras, or I'm going to get that wrong. I know
Hmm.
I'm getting that wrong, but Martin Owen is a fantastic horn player. Or
Hmm.
you have Radek Babrek,
Yeah.
or
Uh-huh.
Stefan Dorr, like all, and then they've had a lot of guest principal horns throughout the years. Andrew Baines played
Hmm.
um, from LA, or they
Yeah.
have the guest principal horn from the Munich. I'm going to get that wrong. It's the Rundfunk.
Ah, Rundfunk Orchestra. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Rundfunk.
Hmm.
Yeah, and he's terrific as well. Eric Terwilliger. So, I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
when you go back to this library, you see all these different
Oh,
players,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Hmm.
you hear all this. You might hear 5 versions of Tchaikovsky 5 or 5 versions of Mahler 5, but they're
Yep.
all different. They're all with a different conductor, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
could
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
different players in the orchestra. And it's this documentation where not only can I learn from listening, like in
Hmm.
the highest possible form, but you can also
Absolutely.
learn from watching. And I feel like
Watching. Yeah.
watching is like when I see something with my eyes, I can understand something maybe I might not pick up with my ears. It's
Yeah.
just an extra sense, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I
Yeah.
always watch it, and then from my perspective as a violinist, see how they do different things and how the concertmeisters they play their own solos differently. So you learn a lot,
Yeah.
and it's so inspiring that you like click whenever the concert, I mean, whenever it's over, you
Yeah.
like hit the button. Is like you know,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like
it's
these
amazing.
live broadcasts that there's no
Yeah,
there's no fixing. It's real time. It's like,
yeah,
hey, like we're gonna put out this concert that's not perfect, just
hmm,
as you would see this like in the concert hall, but we're gonna put this out to the world. That's like
yeah,
so rare to do something like that. It's like
yeah,
so, because normally whatever we put out to the world is something that's like an edited, finished, polished product.
yeah.
You go
And
back
this
and
is
you
live.
correct the mistakes, but they put out something that's human first, and then they
Right.
go back and they correct the mistakes after.
Right, right, right. I wish like American orchestras here in the
I
United
think
States one.
Detroit, I have to say Detroit's doing something like that. My old,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah, like, my
Okay.
old state,
Oh, wow.
yeah, Detroit.
All
So,
right.
yeah,
So
but
moving on to Chicago Symphony. So how
okay.
did you?
There was one thing I was going to say about Digital Concert Hall,
Uh-huh.
before we back up, is just that yeah, I believe it's all free right now, and I
Okay.
think they're offering that to the public, and that's such
Yeah.
a gift that they're doing that during this time when no one can come see concerts. I think that's really
Mm.
a great gift, and it's yeah. And John says, yeah, Detroit certainly does
Detroit
have,
S. Okay.
yeah, a
Oh,
digital concert
fantastic.
hall.
I will definitely check that out.
So,
Yeah, I
um,
have.
so you want to hear about Chicago? You want to hear where
Yeah.
I'm at now?
So let's say you are in Berlin, right?
Yeah,
Like, working, like playing all these fantastic, inspiring concerts, and then next thing you hear like, hey, Chicago has an opening. First of all, I know like in Germanic, orchestras, it's very hard to get out, like to take some time off.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
am
No,
I right?
so yeah, that is one thing that I did balance before leaving the Berlin Philharmonic. So
Hmm.
I knew that the Chicago Symphony had an opening for principal horn.
Okay.
I knew that New York had an opening for principal horn, and I knew that Cleveland, New York, Chicago, right? Those
Okay.
three big five,
Okay.
as well as there were some associate principal horn openings that were in the mix as well, but it wasn't something. Again, I was interested in playing
Hmm.
the principal horn solos, like
Sure.
the
Absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
so what I decided was with the amount of work that I
Hmm.
had with the Berlin Philharmonic. So it was just, to play at that level,
Yeah.
I have
It's
to
a lot.
be like unbelievably prepared.
Yeah.
And then to, just I have to be in really great shape, and it has to be my only focus, really.
Yeah.
So to add an audition on top of that would just be like, it would be very difficult. So I came back, and also to travel back to the States
Yes.
to be like, in top form for an audition.
Hmm.
Like you have to be playing to win a big five job. You have to be in like unbelievable physical shape. You have to be in unbelievable mental shape,
Yeah.
prepared, all those things. So
Hmm.
I realized, traveling and coming back around the Berlin Philharmonic schedule to do one of these American orchestra auditions just wouldn't be possible.
Okay.
And so I came back to Dallas,
Hmm.
and I said, hey, listen, like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to, have a little bit more time to practice. And I'll
Hmm.
also be able to do the job in Dallas.
Yeah.
And, if one of these American orchestras doesn't, wind up working out for me,
Hmm.
I was living in Dallas, and I love the orchestra. I love the
Yeah.
city. I love the
Yeah.
climate. I mean,
Yeah.
like, how great is that, man? Like you get winters that like don't go below freezing often. Like it might be 1 month of freezing, and then you're back to like, sunny and 60s, 70s, and
Oh, yes.
it's beautiful weather. I mean,
Yeah.
don't tell anybody, but North Texas is like one of the best climates in the world.
Okay.
People are
Well,
nice, the climate's nice, the orchestra is really, really good, and it's really
yeah.
well supported. Like people love that orchestra.
Oh, yeah. 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 Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I came back to Dallas,
Hmm.
and I was practicing for these big auditions. The first one was Cleveland Orchestra,
Hmm.
and I'd been playing an Alexander 103, and I switched over to a Con 8D, which I mean couldn't be farther apart, as far as
Hmm.
horns go. So the Con 8D is the big American, large bell, nickel silver horn that
Hmm.
is not typically played in the United States anymore. It was really in style, in fashion in the 1950s and 1960s. It was top of the
Oh,
line.
okay. Hmm.
And then, other horn makers started making horns that were maybe a little bit more versatile.
Uh-huh.
But
Gotcha.
the Cleveland Orchestra, because their hall is so fantastic. I mean,
Yeah, Severance. Yeah, it's
Severance
fantastic
Hall,
hall.
again, one of the best halls in
One
America.
of the best, yes. Hmm.
You just don't have to force in there. And
Yeah.
the Con AD has such a warm, rich, beautiful sound that you just don't have to force. They're able to play those instruments, which
Hmm.
not unfortunately we can't play in certain halls because of the acoustic.
Yeah.
So I switched back to the 8D from the 103, Alexander 103, which
Oh,
is typically played all throughout Europe.
okay.
And I felt like I was going back to my roots. It was like,
Uh-huh.
the first horn I played was a Con 8D or Con 60, excuse me. And then in eighth grade, I got a Con 8D, and that was the horn that I won Fort Worth on. That was the horn I
Uh-huh.
won, you know, um, Victoria on. That was the horn I recorded my first album on. And
Oh,
so
wow.
it was like I was just having fun going back to like, this thing that had been a part of my process, my part of my growing up.
Yeah.
And I started practicing, and I went for this audition. And normally for an audition, like they'll give you a list, right? Like
Sure.
for the day of.
Hmm.
And uh, here in Cleveland, they were just like, okay, boom, play this excerpt. Boom, play this excerpt. And they didn't tell you. They were like, all right, and now play this one. And now play this one. So
Okay, okay.
I played
Gotcha.
the first excerpt, and I played the first round. I did really well. And then I kept myself pretty warmed up, got some lunch, came
Hmm.
back, and then I went and I was like, just a little tired from all the warm ups and maybe
Sure.
switching horns, maybe some other stuff. But I go up and they put on long call, like in the middle, halfway through this list. And I go to play long call, and I was like playing it. And long call is like, 2.5 minutes of like a horn solo.
Hmm.
And if you don't pace yourself really well, like you just don't have enough gas in the tank.
Yeah.
And I guess I just wasn't comfortable enough on this horn that's a little bit bigger than the European horns. And I was going, you feel yourself like, okay, it's starting to slip.
Hmm.
Okay, all right, well, I'm just gonna go for it. And then I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
like
yeah.
I was just going, and then I went for the high C at the end. And I was like, da 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 burp, and I was like, oh well, thank you, and how.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Take a bow.
I was like, okay, well, and I played the rest of the audition really well. Like I was like, well, hey, I've already missed the big note on this one, so the least I can do is just play really beautifully for the rest of the audition. And I
Yeah.
represented myself really well for the rest of the pieces because,
Hmm.
things happen, right? And
Sure, of
I
course.
figured one note
You never know.
couldn't make or break an audition, but I think at that point it just demonstrated that maybe in that moment I wasn't, that moment that day I just wasn't secure enough in the conductor's mind to
Hmm.
play that position. So
Yeah.
you got to prove yourself on the moment, on the day, and
Yeah.
be consistent when they
Sure.
want. And
Hmm.
so I went the next week and I played, or 2 weeks later, and I played an audition for the New York Philharmonic
Hmm.
for principal horn, and it
Okay.
went really, really well. I played with the
Hmm.
brass section first on Monday, and then on Friday, I did a principal horn audition with like everything, all the excerpts in the kitchen sink. It was like
Yeah.
everything you could possibly imagine. And then I
Yeah, yeah,
played
yeah.
a Bruckner 8 that night with
Oh,
Yop,
wow.
and
Oh.
I had a great time playing with them, and
Hmm.
I came back and I played a couple more times with them, and then the audition for Chicago came open,
Hmm.
and I was lucky enough to come up and sub with the Chicago Symphony,
Hmm.
and
Yeah. Is that your
just
cat or something?
yeah, I do.
Okay.
This is the cat. This is Muffy, and so Muffy, she, yeah, she's my
Okay.
German cat,
All right. Wow.
and yeah, I adopted her in Berlin.
Oh, I
So
see. I see.
yeah, she
Okay.
loves German. Loves it when I speak
That is
German
cute.
to her. Ja, du bist sehr
Okay.
schön. Ja, oh, du bist die
Hmm.
beste Katze in der ganzen Welt.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
uh,
how mm, how
so
did Chicago go? I mean, how did
well,
it feel
so
there?
what happened was I was still in the running for the New York Philharmonic, and
Okay.
I really loved working with Yop. I knew that,
Hmm. Sure.
but I also knew that, for me, New York is a very busy place, and
Hmm.
I didn't grow up on the East Coast, so
Hmm.
it tires me.
Hmm.
Like all the sounds, all the energy, and
Yeah.
for me, I'm just kind of like an energetic person, and
Hmm.
like things get me excited.
Yeah.
So like I just felt like for me in that city, I felt like I was overstimulated,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
so it maybe wasn't the best fit for me, but
Hmm.
I ended up playing my 2 trial weeks, and then they decided not to hire anyone.
Okay.
So the position's still vacant for principal horn in New York.
Oh,
But
wow. Okay.
after that, I said, okay, listen, I've done Cleveland. It didn't go so
Yeah.
well. I did New York. I did the best I could. Maybe it
Hmm.
wasn't the best fit for me. And I said, Chicago Symphony is the one I've always wanted to do.
Sure.
I'm going to walk you over here real quick. I don't know if you have a second, but
Yeah. 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 Go ahead.
we got this. I made this poster,
Hmm.
and I made this poster in 2013 when there was the first audition for
Hmm.
the Chicago Symphony.
Oh, yeah. That famous hall. Yes.
Yeah,
Of
this
course.
is a Symphony Hall in Chicago,
Yeah.
and I feel like you got to dream, right? You
Yeah.
got and dreaming for me sometimes requires a vision.
Sure.
And I knew I wasn't good enough to be principal horn of the Chicago Symphony, and I didn't think that was a reality. And I'd look at it, and I just dream of being there. But I also said, like, hey, listen, like, someday I want to play with the Chicago Symphony.
Hmm.
And I remember like every day I'd wake up, I'd say, what am I doing today to be closer to playing with the Chicago Symphony?
Okay.
And I would practice. I'd warm up. I'd say, well, the principal horn of the Chicago Symphony is going to wake up today and practice. Principal horn of
Hmm.
the Chicago Symphony today is going to like wake up and, really devote themselves to being a better musician, a better person, a
Hmm.
better, a stronger athlete.
Yeah.
And so, I had that on my wall. And then
Hmm.
after the third audition where I didn't win, I took it down because it was painful to look at because I figured it'd never happen.
Hmm.
And, by this time, when the Chicago Symphony audition happened, I said, I'm not going to give this. I'm not going to give this up, this
Hmm.
dream. And
Absolutely.
and I went for it, and I really practiced hard. I practiced in a very dedicated, methodical way,
Hmm.
just trying to make myself happy, my own results happy.
Yeah.
Right? And I can't control a committee. I can't control like
Absolutely.
what
Yeah.
they think, but I can do the best I can. And
Hmm.
so I prepared, being, as good a version of myself as I could on all the required material. And then when I showed up to the audition, yeah, I was nervous, but I said, this is my truth. Let me just tell my
Yeah.
truth the best I can, and just
Hmm.
my version of it. And if it doesn't align with them, that's okay. But I'm going to do the best I can, and just
Yeah.
try to be as genuine and happy with my preparation. And
Hmm.
so I went out, and I really I didn't leave any stones unturned in my preparation. So when I went out on stage, I just remember like I played how I practiced,
Yeah.
and I felt like, okay, this is how I represent myself, and I felt good about it. And then after the audition, it was like I didn't have the job. There was a 2 week
Hmm.
trial period, but I said
Okay.
I'm not gonna let up the slack right now. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep my eye on the goal. So I did these 2 trial weeks, and I prepared for those, and I wasn't actually sure if they'd happen because of the strike, you
Yeah.
know. And I got the call on Saturday that I'd be coming out on Monday for a Tuesday rehearsal, and so but I'd been practicing, that
Hmm.
that whole, the week before, because I said, what if they call me? What
Right.
if the strike ends? And
Hmm.
so the strike ended, and I came out, and the first note I played with the Chicago Symphony was this like 2.5 minute horn quartet from Bizet
Hmm.
Roma. And I just made
Uh-huh.
sure that I just like was prepared. I
Hmm.
suited up, I showed up, and I just, trusted the other musicians. And
Hmm.
it was just a really natural fit, a natural collaboration. And
Yes. Yeah.
I'm so
Hmm.
grateful to work with those musicians, because every day I show up to the Chicago Symphony, I feel like, in any orchestra, right? Like in
Hmm.
any, I feel like the people around me help make me better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
that way in
Exactly.
the Dallas
Hmm.
Symphony. I felt that way in the Fort Worth Symphony. Like
Yeah.
Mark Houghton, made me better,
Yeah.
by hearing him play.
Hmm.
Haley Hoops, sitting
Hmm.
next to her, and like
Yeah.
Ryan Anthony and Wilfred Roberts and
Yeah.
Greg Eustace and Alex
Yeah.
Carr. Those people made me better. And then,
Absolutely.
showing up and getting to work with like this horn section where everyone is just 150% prepared,
Hmm.
really focused, really dedicated, committed to the details, and then have this uniform way of doing things, like where they're all kind of on the same brainwave.
Hmm.
They have this collective agreement, to support each other, to be nice to each other, to
Yeah.
work together, to be flexible, and to
Yeah.
listen to each other. But all they agreed on the style, and
Hmm.
by that it makes it so much easier for me to come in and to play really well, but
Hmm.
it makes it so much easier for me to come in and be the best that I can be, with these really
Absolutely.
terrific people around me.
Hmm.
So
Oh my God, this is so inspiring. I mean, I really, really appreciate that
thank you.
for sharing that. Like, but I just wanted to add to that that specifically, like, CSO Chicago Symphony Brass was, I mean, is so well known worldwide for that, you know, quality and the sound and the tone, the timbre, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like every single recording you listen to, it's just like blows you away.
Well, I mean, I think the nice thing about the Chicago Symphony is that there is a tradition, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And like the tradition is that, like, hey, like these guys who came before us, like we all listened to,
Yeah.
and like there were recordings available,
Hmm.
right? And so like when we joined the orchestra, we already had like this concept in our mind, like, wow, this is what the Chicago Symphony sounds like, and
Hmm.
this is like inspired me because I love how they sound, and it's
Yeah.
inspired me to make music myself. And
Hmm.
so getting to now be a part of something that had and has inspired me,
Hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
you just feel this unbelievable like responsibility. That's the
Hmm.
best word I can say. It's like
Hmm.
I feel indebted and responsible and grateful.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
with that, with those feelings, like it comes this commitment, like, hey, I'm going to practice today, and I'm
Hmm.
going to really look at my part inside and out, so that when I show up to work, I really, the public gets the most pure version of the piece. Like the public gets this version that the composer wanted, that the
Yeah.
composer asks for, that the composer envisioned.
Mhm.
And then number two, I'm going to show up and make something with my colleagues. I'm going to listen to them and really like be like just a cog in the wheel, right? So
Yeah.
like I'm not like, there's no big I's and little U's, right? It's
Yeah.
like this group, this unity. And I'm just
Yes.
one of those cogs in one of those gears that turn the whole
Hmm.
thing. And
Exactly.
and just knowing when my part needs to turn and when my part needs to, kind of like take a back seat, right?
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, also, man, it's just like, yeah, I feel the more I'm prepared, the more I help out my teammates. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about teamwork as well. I mean, it's a lot
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
I love I love the team, right? Like,
Hmm.
as I said, John Ye is like one of those guys that like, always has a smile on his face, and, and is always supporting everybody. Like he was one of the
Hmm.
first people to welcome me in the orchestra. And I just feel like, that's the vibe here, like
Hmm.
the new member gets welcomed and like is given the space to learn and to grow, but
Yeah.
is also like, supported.
Hmm. Okay. All right. I guess somebody's hungry now, right?
Muffy's agreeing. Yeah, she says, yes, jawohl.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Stimmt's, ja.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, David, I wanted to thank you very much. I mean, I really appreciate that, you shared all this, your, experience and, the stories. They're really inspiring and fascinating.
Hey,
And,
I mean,
uh,
dude, you inspire me, man. Like, seriously, like, just the fact, I mean, I've lived in a foreign country, right? Like,
mhm,
I've been like the foreigner, and like, I
mhm,
know how hard it is to get out of a small town,
mhm.
right? And I'm sure just, you were born in Kazakhstan, you came
Yeah,
over here, and, you made an education, you made a career. I mean, you've
mhm,
adopted like, the culture, but you also bring your own culture. And,
yeah,
just the fact that you're like, you're giving back to like, so many people at home, but also so many people in your, in your community,
yeah,
right? It's like, that's inspiring. So
yeah,
anything we can do to help each other, right? It's in this
absolutely.
time of like, in this time of coronavirus, I feel like this, I've learned, number one, that we're more connected than we think we are, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I have to help now more people
Mhm,
than I was before. I have to reach out and give back,
mhm.
because a student who contacts me might be a future colleague. A student who
Absolutely.
contacts me for a lesson might be a future donor. But
Mhm,
how my interaction, is with this student is going
mhm.
to have a ripple in the pond,
Yeah,
right? And if I treat them with respect, I treat them with like the same, whether they're, going to be the next, for lack of a better term, Michael Jordan, or
mhm,
they're just, someone that dribbles a basketball. They're still
yeah,
people that are part of this, this, this collective community,
yeah,
and we need everybody right now. We all need each other. And
yeah,
so, like, if I can treat those younger musicians who are maybe not quite so far down the path, the same
mhm,
way I treat someone who's far down the path and then some, right? Like who's
mhm.
leading the charge. Like I
Yeah,
want to treat everybody the same, because we're all valuable, and
mhm.
we need everyone.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and it also, when I help out somebody else,
Mhm,
it it takes me out of my own ego. It takes me out of my own kind of my own problem.
mhm.
Sometimes, like, if I'm worried, like, what are people going to think about me, or how are people going to judge me?
Mhm.
And that's a, it's a concern, right? But
Yeah,
like, when I worry about that, then I'm like, I'm not in this effective moment where I can give back. I'm not in
yeah,
this effective moment where I can be of service to the next person.
yeah, yeah,
And I think for me, like, being of service, whether it is with my musical voice, or whether it's of service with my stories or my
yeah. Hmm.
experiences, or
Yeah.
just listening, just being present.
Hmm.
Those are all ways that, and we can all help out with our strength in a different way.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David, so much. I really appreciate you. I just wanted to remind you, David Cooper, principal horn of the Chicago Symphony. And also, David, the YouTube version will be posted, so our conversation will be there, okay? So we
Hey,
can take a
wonderful.
look. Yeah, so guys, you can follow his David's Instagram at David Cooper, and you're doing great. All these videos you're making, it's really truly inspiring.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's my love of music, really.
yeah,
And I think that's
mhm.
what it's my love of people and my love of music that just makes me want to continue becoming a better musician and
Absolutely,
continue sharing. And
absolutely.
during this time, I'm not able to share with collectively with the Chicago Symphony, but I
Hmm.
can try to bring keep the people who love the Chicago Symphony engaged in music, engaged in conversation, and
Yeah,
engaged in thought. And honestly, like I really appreciate this opportunity to talk today. So
sure. No, I appreciate you, and
yeah,
yeah, well, stay healthy, stay safe, okay?
dude, huge hugs, man. Great
Yeah,
to see you,
yeah,
Orta.
yeah. Great
Hey,
to see
and
you,
next time,
David.
I look forward to hearing that story about.